good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world on this fine sunny day. At the beginning of summer, I've got a great one for you today. You're not going to want to miss this. I've got an interview with world-renowned press photography guru, Paul Delmar. Don't go away. To kickstart the summer into action, we have none other than the UK press photography guru, Paul Delmar. Before we get into Paul's interview, just take a second to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notification of new posts. Now, let's get straight on to the action. Paul.
Indeed. Actually, I'm Paul Delmar, and I started my career with a full set of teeth. But one of my teeth has fallen out just prior to the shooting. So I started my career actually as a boy doing freelance work for Midland United Newspapers, which is the Dudley Herald Group. And I did that by finding out when nobody was working on a Sunday, or they'd have 2 or 3 jobs. And I'd go, for example, for a pub that was being knocked down, an ancient pub, do that, write the caption and send it in. And I could tell you the true story that goes with it, but the photographer who left the company was then replaced by a very young man, me, who started my career there. And what a chance I had. There was Goff and there was Ray Bradbury. Both award-winning photographers. Graham was Royal Photographer of the Year in the latter part of his career, and Ray Bradbury was the man who did the pictures of Prince William's crash at Halfpenny Green in the Midlands and ended up on the Sun. And both of them were so adept in framing pictures, producing pictures, and using their camera skills. And in those days, you had to develop and print everything yourself. So physics and chemistry was a vital part of doing your job. You all had to be able to understand the chemicals, mix them, produce them. And as far as getting the picture out, you've got to print them as well. If you could say that it was an apprenticeship of quality, it was more than that. They taught me all they knew because they felt they had nothing to hide. A lot of people who reach the top of their career do not share all the information with you. And these two were absolutely wonderful. They motivated me all the time because they were so enthusiastic about the pictures. I started on a large format camera, which you would call a plate camera, and then went through to a 2 1/4 square, went to 35mm, and fortunately, when I left the profession to start training photographers for the National Council for the Training of Journalists, I was fortunate enough to have people I trained from scratch and people who were in the profession who came to get their qualifications. And we were able to, at that point, transcend from black and white into colour and colour printing, and from colour into digital. And we pioneered digital photography in 1980, which of course was a marvellous opportunity for the photographers to be able to have a multiplicity of skills. And in those days they were even taught physics, chemistry, law, and every aspect. But the one thing you really can't teach someone is the passion and the desire to take great pictures. And the photographers I know now all fit into that category. I think I took that mantle on board when I took up the position, and so much so I've seen the photographers go from strength to strength, and I've done that. I did that for 30 years and retired, and unfortunately it's something that gets into your blood, not like a virus, but it is in a way, because you can't stop taking pictures, you can't stop talking pictures, you're seeing life on the front line. It's incredibly exciting, challenging, can be dangerous, can be very dangerous. I've done a few wars in my time, but I was young then. I had no fear. I have now. But as far as that's concerned, it was just a job. And that's the thing that people forget. If your job is your passion, you can't go wrong. And if you really enjoy it and bump into people who do, that's great. And I'm not averse to encouraging people to go into it for a profession. It's not quite as demanding as it used to be, and the standards are not as high in certain publications where they're forcing, for example, a journalist, a reporter, we're journalists as well, reporters to take pictures with the phones. The phones are excellent, yes, but for a writer to be able to produce and get all the story, he or she has to sacrifice something, and it's normally the pictures, because they're not photographers by their nature, and so they're just getting a picture that doesn't really illustrate the story, whereas our job used to be really to get a grip of the story and illustrate it well and get all the ingredients into that picture which would benefit the journalist's story. But as far as now my retirement's concerned, I mean, I've had another career running alongside photojournalism and press photography, because again, how the business changed, photographers were taught to write stories to go with their pictures. Great asset when you end up on your own freelancing, that you can produce both the goods, and that's a damn good idea. And we've all been able to do that latterly, because we collected as much information when we were at the job, because we talk to people. We are people persons, I would say, quite honestly. And my other career, which was flying jets, even that didn't give me quite the adrenaline rush that I'm afraid taking pictures did and does. And I still now judge photographs from all over the world in exhibitions, and help out at universities with their accreditation for not photojournalism or press photography, but for a 21st century person who has to learn all aspects of photography today. For example, Riley Photos, Phil Riley, he's a photographer who in fact was working in the profession, was sent up to get his qualifying exams on the course. He now has been able to turn his skills into a multitude of aspects in photography, both moving and still, but also public relations and any skill that's required, and drone photography. So he was there trying to learn and get the skills in those days that when I was teaching. Now he's leading the field in qualifying in those skills that now people are still striving to attain. So it pays to be pushy, it pays to be good, and it pays to enjoy it. They used to say about photographers and artists. Artists paint with oils on canvas. We paint with light. And a lot of photographers in the old days did not understand the importance of light, especially a lot of photographers who just used to go in and go bang with the flash, or bang, never think about the light. But as we on the course developed the use of studio lighting and flash fill-in and subtle ways of using light, that has benefited tremendously. Even in portraiture, it makes or breaks an image, and it gives a whole atmosphere. And actually, in fact, we were talking about the black and white movies, the quality of the sharpness of the image, but also the lighting was absolutely immaculate. It captured the whole atmosphere. If there's a lesson to be learned, that's what lighting does for you. And as I said, you can go from a silhouette of someone to a beautifully lit portrait if you know how to use the light. And it is important, very important. Well, press photography is so diverse, and photojournalism, which is just had a few words to it, or shouldn't say that really, but as far as that's concerned, the diversity of it is that, for example, I could go out in the morning and I could photograph an animal at the zoo. I could do a fashion shoot. I could do a politician or a royal visit or whatever. And actually, talking about politicians, which one or two people are talking about at the moment, is talking about an MP who became the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. I did a picture when she was electioneering for Ted Heath, who was the then Prime Minister. And I went along, and I arrived late because my colleague had been in a car crash. So I had to produce and do all his jobs. So I arrived and she was just about to go on stage, and I saw a poster of Edward Heath, picked it up and said, "Could you have this under your arm?" And she picked it up. I had 2 frames taken on 2¼ square, so it was just a wind of the handle to get it, and she threw it on the floor. Now, I took the group picture to my editor then, and they said, "Oh, we only want the group shot." I said, "Well, can I sell the other picture?" And they said, "Well, you do what you like with it." So I offered it up to, yes, it was Holton Deutsch, the agency, who then sold it to the Sun, and it said with her Ted tucked underneath her arm. And the other one the Daily Mirror used was Maggie the Headhunter. She, of course, became Prime Minister. But that picture then ended up in the National Portrait Gallery, being hung as a picture of the century, and appeared in a book. So that was one of the memorable pictures. But when one thinks of the great pictures that you produce, it's probably the next one. I like doing the royal assignments because you had to get the picture. In fact, every job we did, we had to get the picture. My rival in those days, I was put, when I was on the Birmingham Post and Mail, I was put onto an area called Dudley in the West Midlands, which was my patch. And there was an Express and Star, a very successful, a very good newspaper, which still is, obviously both of them are still going. And the photographer who was on that particular patch was Graham Goff. And also the guy who's filming this, Phil Riley, he later on joined it. But Graham was head to head with me for circulation and pictures. And we would give no quarter to each other. We had to get an exclusive, or we had to get the picture. And it was incredibly competitive, as I said, to gain the circulation. But the main thing was that everybody seemed to forget was Graham was my best man at my wedding, and to have to keep trying to stitch him up, and he was a friend as well. It took a bit of doing. One incident, amusing incident, was Graham and his wife had been invited round for dinner at our house. And as they arrived, a telephone rang, and I said, "Oh, I'm just going to pop out for a minute." I think they thought I was going to go and get a takeaway or whatever. Anyway, Graham was quite patient for a while, and then apparently the phone rang, and he dashed off. And there was this guy who was 16 stone, had got on his roof to repair the TV aerial, fallen through the roof, and got trapped there. And they had to get a helicopter to winch him or get him out of the roof. And Graham arrived, and I was there doing all the pictures. And he'd been sitting at home waiting for me. I suppose that's competitive, is it?
Still got the picture then?
Yes, he's still got the picture, yes. You can't beat him. Those days, there were different requirements, different standards, different equipment. But the one thing you've got to remember if you're taking pictures is how much fun are you going to get out of it? Because even my granddaughter, who is totally maniac with the phone and does all the pictures, still gets prints run off. I'm thinking about how my grandchildren and my children grew up, and to have the dedication that we've got with the advent of people being made redundant and COVID and all sorts of things happening that will interfere with your career. It's nice to have a photograph that you've taken that you can look at and show you those happy moments that have happened in your life. Or you can record history with one of these, they work just as well with the latest ones, probably not in this one, but the ones that most people get. This takes a fortnight and a bag of chips to get it to work, but it works beautifully. But make sure that your feeling is shown in the picture that you take. The one thing I always remember talking to people, I said, all these pictures you take, and people used to stand at the back and stick their fingers up in the air and or get drunk and fall over, and they always used to take, and they always used to laugh at. Each one of those is a part of history because it's your personal history, and how nice to record that forever. But keep on taking pictures, because some of the world's most famous pictures have been taken by amateurs who have taken the opportunity to press the shutter at the right time. If you can make a few quid out of it, good luck to you.